Hello, and welcome to I Hate Talking, a podcast about talking, including etymology, frustrating topics, current events, and other random subjects. I'm Adam.
And I'm Steph. We are married, and we invite you into these discussions with us as we talk about the good and the bad of talking.
We hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to episode 33 of I Hate Talking.
Hi, everyone.
All right, we will do a word that I heard recently and actually did not know what it meant, and I had to look it up myself. So it is the word terroir.
Terroir?
Terroir.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Let's see if we can find it used in a sentence. Sometimes terroir and varietal character win over technique. We like these wines to represent their terroir, their soil, their vineyard.
Okay. So using it in a sentence like that, I would think it means like a cultural thing or a regional thing. Terroir would be representative of your region, right?
Yes, that's starting to get at the definition.
Okay.
So from the Oxford Language Dictionary, terroir is the complete natural environment in which a particular wine is produced, including factors such as the soil, topography, and climate. And it also, while typically used in relation to wine, and that is where I first heard of the term in a description of a wine, it also appears to have been more generally used in terms of other beverages and spirits and things of that nature that are produced from different regions. So it's basically the all-inclusive particular environment that produces said wine or spirit.
So it's always like a beverage, like an alcoholic beverage.
Yes, it can be used more generally. It's actually a French term, so just like our poutine being French, maybe there's some French language etymology that is either not as well known or maybe more difficult to understand, but it basically comes from a French word that means land, and it can be more broadly used to describe any environmental factors that affect a crop, but typically because it is related to land and the production of something from the land, it's going to be in some form or fashion agricultural in nature, or in this case, wine.
Okay, cool. I think I looked up one time a non-alcoholic Thanksgiving drink because Thanksgiving's coming up. I was like, hey, this would be really fun to make like a fun festive drink for dinner. And now every time I'm on Instagram, they're giving me all these recipes. I mean, they look amazing, and most of them are non-alcoholic, or you can add stuff to them if you want. But would that be, if I'm using my local homegrown produce to produce these, would that be a, what's the word again? Not terrain. What is it called? It's a
Terroir.
terroir. Maybe we can ask our friend, somebody who listens to the pod is going to Europe in a couple days. So maybe we can ask her if she hears about it. My kids, even today, we were chatting with her and we mentioned Europe, and they were so excited for her. And they wanted to bombard her with a million questions. I was like, let's let her enjoy her vacation, and then we'll have her over or something and ask her a million questions afterwards. But one of the cutest was one of our kids was like, is she going to go to New York? And then the other was like, no, that's in America. That's not Europe. But it was such a sincere question. They were so excited to know she was going to see New York City on her European trip. But maybe she'll enjoy some terroir while she's over there.
Well, it's not a kind of wine.
Oh.
It is a description of the basically environment that produced the wine in terms of the climate and topography and whatever makes that land where the grapes are grown and processed special for that particular harvest.
So I could say like the terroir of this wine is exceptional.
No, I think it has more to do with what actually produced the wine. It's the not necessarily a specific location. It's not specifically an altitude. It's not specifically whether it is a temperate Mediterranean region. It's all inclusive of all those things. And when all those things are combined in such a way that is specific to just that one location where the grape is produced, that is the definition of terroir.
Okay.
So we'll talk a little bit about the terroir of humans as well. So does the particular location, climate, or land that you grew up in have a impact on who you are as an adult?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, good job. Look at that. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely is a nature versus nurture. Like, is that kind of where we're going at for that then, right?
You picked up what I was laying down.
I definitely think it's both. But I want to hear what you think about it first.
So I agree. I think that oftentimes in a lot of particular sciences that there is a overemphasis of one single position over another, and that happens quite frequently, especially within the field of psychology, that there is not necessarily one specific theory that is the one single theory. And likewise, I think that it is neither exclusively nature nor exclusively nurture that wins out in terms of how a person comes to be who they are, but that it is both, and that they are pretty well equally weighted. I guess that is perhaps the nuance, is that maybe there is one more than the other that would win out in terms of its total impact. But likewise, when we consider the grape, is it the soil, or is it the climate, or is it the topography, or is it the care of the vineyard master and all the people that process that grape that produces the wine and makes it a good wine or a bad wine?
There's a study recently that I was hearing about talking about twins. They studied identical twins and whether they're picky eaters or not. And if you're considered a picky eater, you're much more likely, if you had an identical twin, that twin would be a similar picky eater. But if they were fraternal twins or just siblings, there wasn't the same correlation with food preferences. And so they were trying to show, their hypothesis was that it's some kind of genetic thing that makes someone a picky eater, someone who only wants chicken nuggets and french fries versus someone who would eat an entire array of food.
And I think twins are an interesting concept that are frequently used within the study of psychology and some of these nurture versus nature debates, because there's anecdotal stories that I've heard and have not really researched all that much their validity, but looking at twins that were separated at birth and then were found to be related later in life, and they had the exact same name of their wife, and they had the same breed of dog, and they lived in the same style of house, and the amount of things that were either exactly the same or very, very similar was uncanny. But again, whether that is actually true or not remains yet to be validated from our research, I suppose, and may not, again, hold true for all of the population. But an interesting anecdote nonetheless.
Yeah, I had a friend in college. She was adopted from birth. She never knew her birth parents or family. In college, she got interested in finding out who they were. Ended up, long story, she found a private eye. He found them, and she got to meet them. By this point, her birth mom had several other kids. And I guess the birth mom was quite a bit younger when she had her. And then after that, had a bunch of other kids. And their laugh was identical. And I forget exactly what it was, but there was some weird food mixture she loved that her siblings all loved. And there's no way that they would have known that because they didn't know her birth family at all.
And I guess that would be used more in the nature side of things, is that this is your nature, because these people had very, very different upbringings and lifestyles since they were separate, and nonetheless still enjoyed the exact same food or the same breed of dog or whatever the case may be in these examples with twins.
Okay. Also, side note, how old do you have to be to watch The Parent Trap? Because that's like the premise in that story, right? Like, is that a show that we should show our kids soon? I think that might be fun.
I think there's a couple different versions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably the older version may be more tame. I don't know.
Not the Lindsay Lohan. That's what I grew up with. I really thought Lindsay Lohan was a twin for many, many years. Because I think I'm her age or around it. So I watched it when it came out, and I really thought she was a twin for the longest time. But yes, so we've made points for the nature part. What about nurture? What are some arguments you have for nurture?
So nurture, I think, will be based on studies that show whether children have had a lot of positive experiences in their life or negative experiences in their life. And there is a psychological term that currently escapes me in terms of what those are. But if you've had a certain number of traumatic experiences as a child, that you are then therefore more at risk for dangerous behavior as an adult, or crime, or lack of success within the job market.
Like the ACEs score? Is that what you're talking about?
That would be it, yes. What is the acronym?
What's ACEs stand for? The ACEs score, it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences.
And then there's also, probably not as fancy of an acronym, but I think there's also a positive instead of adverse score that has come about recently, where if you have a certain number of positive experiences, that those can negate or outweigh the negative experiences or the adverse experiences, as it was said. And that if you have a certain number of positive experiences, that then therefore you will actually have a higher likelihood of being successful at a job, or a person that does not have any particular run-ins with the law and things like that. So from a statistical basis, it seems that there is some sort of nurture aspect in that, from the fact on what your actual experience is and the outcome statistically from those things, either adverse or otherwise.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Part of it, my agreement would just be like a philosophical agreement that I personally don't believe that you're born away and then you're just like condemned to be like that. Like, I'm a big believer in adoption, and maybe one day we'll go into our adoption story with our family planning that we attempted, but we're big believers in adoption. And so part of it's a philosophy, like, because we believe so strongly in adoption, I feel like it does have to be a lot of nurture. But also, I think that when you do see families that have adopted, families that, like you said, the parents are maybe not biological, because again, if it's biological, your argument may be it's nature. But maybe a step parent that was super involved, and the children take on those traits and hobbies and characteristics of the step parent or of the adopted parent or of a close family friend sort of thing. I think all that influences your upbringing and your beliefs severely.
Precisely, and that's something that we talked about in some of our very early episodes. And I think it was actually a word of the episode was elastic, and the human psyche's ability to adapt and overcome certain scenarios or challenges or events that have to be overcome in their own life. And like you said, adapting to those particular situations, that you can be elastic and you're not locked in to specifically one thing or the other thing from birth.
Yeah. Is this something that's similar to, in reference to my kids? One of my children, his accent is very strong based on where we live and who we're hanging out with. For a while, his closest friend was very Southern, had a strong Southern accent. And he had this accent that was adorable. But we don't, obviously, hearing us, we do not have a Southern accent. So people would ask about it. It's just he spent all his time with this buddy. And then life situations changed, and we no longer get to see this friend. And now he talks like a different friend. And I've had personal friends myself talk about how my voice changes also when we lived in Pennsylvania. I guess I had an accent similar to that. And then when I had friends that I grew up with, noticed that. That would probably be more of the nurture thing also, right? Like picking up nuances and picking up habits or the inflections and stuff like that of those around you. I think that can probably be a very personal thing. Like I know when we're watching TV, if I'm watching a show that has a lot of cuss words in it, I mean, we don't cuss. That's our personal beliefs and preference. But words that I do not like will slip out of my mouth easier if I'm watching shows that have those kind of words in it, where you can be around that atmosphere, around other people that say those things or watch those things, and you don't have any inclination, like it doesn't slip out like it does for me.
Yeah, and I think part of that is going into the mind's ability to fit in with their surroundings, and that therefore you will, in some form or fashion, reflect behavior and speech patterns of those that you're talking to as a strategy to fit in and be part of the quote unquote tribe of that particular person or group that you are talking to or interacting with or socializing with, whatever the case may be.
Okay. Maybe so subconsciously I'm trying to fit in. And that's why I'm taking their voice inflections or phrases.
Could be. And perhaps the reason that I don't have as much of an issue with that is that I'm conscious of that. Like if I use a particular phrase or a word that perhaps is used more within my workplace specifically, or even just the local area that we find ourselves in that is not natural to me, I am very consciously aware of it and know that it's not natural, but I'm doing it still subconsciously, but like my conscious is aware of how my subconscious is behaving.
Okay.
So that I can actually still experience that, but I'm consciously aware of what my subconscious is doing in the moment.
Your conscience is aware of your subconscious.
Yes. Well, I think at least before I'm speaking. So I'm, again, thinking what I'm going to speak ahead of time. Now, some of that is going to be generated, I think, from my subconscious, but my conscious is gating everything that my subconscious would speak on its own and being aware of whether that is my natural language or something that is being added in order to do this adaptation to fit in.
Okay, but people that, like myself and our son, our one particular son that's more inclined to take on the characteristics of those around us, do you think that it's because we want to fit in, or is it just because we're influenced by those around us?
If there's no reason for that particular thing to happen, why would it be strictly influence alone?
I don't know. See, this is like, is this just my subconscious and I'm not aware of it? I'm not making the choice of like, I want to be like this person, and that's why I'm talking like this. In fact, if you're using words, I would not want to use a word that I would consider inappropriate. But even like, there's friends that I talk with my hands a lot more frequently around than others. And it's not like, oh, they talk with their hands, so I'm going to do it too. It just seems to happen. So are you saying that's still my subconscious trying to fit in? Or is that just, I don't know. I don't want to think that I'm just being influenced willy-nilly around whoever I'm with.
Yeah, and I believe my presupposition in that is that action, whether it be realized or subconscious, is done for some benefit. So whether it be a learned behavior from being around these other people, or just something that, again, maybe you consciously want to fit in and therefore are mimicking these particular people that you're around, that one way or the other, there's still some benefit that is being derived either consciously or subconsciously from making that adaptation.
Do you, as you self-proclaim, not do these, you don't pick up these habits? What do you feel like
No,
fit?
that's incorrect. I do pick up the habits. I'm just consciously aware of when they take place.
But then you stop doing them, right?
No, I would still do them because I
Oh. So
believe.
you do it and then you'd be like, oh man, I did that.
No, it's not necessarily something of regret. It's that I'm just aware that I am doing this subconscious behavior and letting it flow through as, in my mind, a adaptation that makes me fit in with the group that I am part of.
Okay, so you're doing it to fit in.
I mean, that's my basic belief. I don't know if there's any actual validity to that, but I think it makes sense. And again, there would have to be some, even if it is a basic human nature subconscious strategy, there would be some benefit to it. And I think it would be most logical to say that that benefit is just fitting in with the group that you're in so that you are more cohesive and accepted by that group.
Okay. So for me, we have a sweet friend. I love her so much. And she talks a lot with her hands. And I know that when I'm with her, I do it. And if I've spent time with her the following days, I do it a lot also. I've so much so that I've put my hands in my pocket. Like I'll catch myself and I put my hands in my pocket so I can't talk with my hands. So would you be like, is it to that level for you? Or how would you be able to control the impulse to replicate what you're seeing and doing?
So I think either I'm consciously monitoring what I'm saying before I say it. So I'm not allowing my subconscious to completely override my speech faculties or talking with my hands, which I don't know if I've ever done that very much. Maybe when I'm describing something that is actually physical in nature with like a length or a depth or height or something, maybe I would be using my hands. But again, that would be more from a practical aspect or maybe for emphasis, right? But again, that would also be sort of a learned behavior. Like if I was giving a speech or doing some sort of formal presentation where hand gestures would make it more impactful some way, I'd actually practice those things and have those things, again, planned out from a conscious perspective level first. Or there is occasionally sometimes where that will slip out and not be consciously regarded before I speak or do whatever the particular habit or mimicry is. And I will still catch myself and realize that that is not my natural disposition to do those things, and perhaps reflect on it in the moment or at a later time and decide if that's how I want to behave or not, and then take a more guarded approach in terms of preventing myself from using that particular word or phrase or action, whatever that particular thing was, and therefore not do it in the future.
Okay. So you're saying that you are aware of your tour and you're choosing whether to utilize it or not. Is that true?
Perhaps, yes. So, and I guess it goes back to the fact that our terroir changes over the course of your lifetime, that there is a terroir during your formative years of your childhood, and that perhaps that particular land that you grew up in with all of its soil composition or topography or the care of your parents and some of those particular experiences, whether they be adverse or positive, that then as a child still or young adult or an adult, you are in a different terroir. Your land has changed. You are among different people. You're among different culture that Perhaps your terroir of your own internal self will change and come to match that of wherever you are planted, or you would still retain some of your original terroir from, again, those formative years of your childhood.
Perfect. There you go. All right. Well, that was awesome. And if you like the terroir of this podcast, please like it, subscribe, and share it with anyone you think might like it.
All right. Very good. So, from your friends at I Hate Talking, until next time, remember, it is only through talking that we begin the journey to understanding.